Dub watcher.
Sub watcher.
Subs are the best.
What? No, they aren't!
Look, the sub is the true and original performance. The dub sounds weird and cringy in comparison.
Idiot, you just say that because you're used to the Japanese voices. The dub sounds just as good, if not better. You're just a snob.
Looks like someone's just too lazy to read subtitles. Can't really blame you. I wouldn't expect the highest IQ from a dub watcher such as yourself.
Yeah, well, I'd rather watch anime than read it.
Sounds like a skill issue. Next, you're gonna tell me that you actually liked Goku's Superman speech in the original dub.
At least Goku sounds like a full-grown man in the dub. In Japanese, he sounds like a screaming grandma.
Hey, you put some respect on Masako Nozawa's
what if
name.
I don't?
She's
What
the
are you gonna do
definitive
about it? Grandma Goku, Grandma Goku.
For as long as I can remember, there has always been one consistent debate within the anime community, and that debate is sub versus dub. It is a tireless conflict that has gone on ever since anime became popular and will continue to go on until the inevitable heat death of the universe. There's plenty of people who feel passionately enough about the subject to fight tooth and nail over it. And I'm not one of these people. I am of the opinion that people just have preferences and should be able to enjoy a show however they see fit, so long as they're being respectful about it. For instance, I'm someone who usually watches dub because that's just what I'm used to. And I don't typically like reading subtitles, at least in the case of animation. But I would never tell anyone that they're wrong for watching sub or preferring one voice over the other. I mean, I still watch sub if there's no available dub, and that's not even to say that I'll always watch the dub, because sometimes I just don't really vibe with certain performances. So to me, none of it's really all that serious. But despite the fact that I personally don't really have a dog in this race, I still find the entire debate kind of fascinating. Because if you ignore the animosity that either side might throw at each other, there are good points for both sides. And today, I'd like to explore those points, really analyze the pros and cons of subs and dubs. So let's get right into it. And the first thing that I hear the most from people that prefer subs is that they generally just think the Japanese voice actors give better performances than the English voice actors. A lot of this really does just come down to the preferences of the individual, but something worth noting is that the voice acting industry in Japan is very, very popular and well respected. The best way I can put it is that the voice acting industry is seen with the same level of seriousness and professionalism in Japan as something like big budget films in America. So it stands to reason that many actors are going to approach their job with this mindset. Actors like Daisuke Ono, Yuki Kaji, and Kenjiro Tsuda tend to amass huge fan followings. Kenjiro Tsuda, your voice is like fine oak. What was I talking about? Animation, for the most part, is just a bigger thing in Japan, whereas anime dubbing is a bit more of a niche industry in the West. Which could also explain why there's a bit more variety in what voice actors you'll hear in the sub. Dub studios typically stick to a select pool of actors they prefer to use throughout their shows. And that's not to say that those actors are bad, it can just get kind of annoying when it starts to feel like you're hearing the same voices over and over again. And really, I think that a lot of people's issues with dubs probably can be summed up with the way dubs are produced in general. For one, most of the time the voice actors for the original Japanese version will do a scene together and can bounce their dialogue off one another. This makes for a very natural sounding scene, a luxury that is not afforded to dub actors who have to record their lines separately. Along with this, Japanese voice actors can freely act and put as much passion into their delivery as they want because the scene will be animated around their performance, whereas the dub actor has to match their speech with the character's mouth movements. Which brings us to another big reason why people might prefer subs over dubs, and that the sub is going to be the closest to the original work. Not only are voice actors limited in how they can act with a pre-existing animation, but so are the people who write the scripts for the dub. There's only so much a certain character can say based on the way their mouth moves, and sometimes this requires big changes that can make dialogue very different from the original Japanese. And this is in addition to the fact that not only do the lines have to be translated from Japanese, but but localized as well. English and Japanese are two completely different languages, obviously. And most of the time, if you were to just directly translate a conversation between two people from Japanese to English, it probably wouldn't sound very natural to a native English speaker. This is where localization comes into play, where a translator takes the original dialogue and interprets it in a way that sounds natural to the people who speak that language. Sometimes an actor or ADR director might even add in dialogue just because it sounds cool or they think their viewers might get a kick out of it. A great example of this is actually the dub for season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen.
So I saw the episode that came out in Japanese, right? And I DM'd Anne, and I was like, how much can I pay you to call Bonnie?
And I was like, nothing. That for free. Well, like, I went into the studio and I was like, okay, Kirsty, don't be mad, but I have a suggestion. It is not like, this is not what's in the manga, but I feel like this carries the spirit of it. And I did it, and she was like, oh, dang, I really like that. And I was like, can we put that in the top spot? Like, let that be the select. And she's like, okay, it'll be the select, but we have to put the real translation, which was something more generic, like, yeah, for being a coward and running away, which is boring. She had to go in the bin too, to go to Crunchyroll, and Crunchyroll let it slide, and I was like, yes!
I personally am fine with stuff like this, but I totally understand how someone would prefer the lines to be as accurate to the original as possible. And typically, subs are going to be a more direct translation. That's why sometimes when you turn on the subtitles for a dubbed anime, the subs might not actually match what the characters are saying because they usually only bother to make subs for the original Japanese. However, that's not to say that just because you're watching subbed, you're going to be getting the pure unaltered script. While subs are typically a more direct translation, they still have to go through some level of localization so that they sound normal to an English speaker. Regardless of if you're watching sub or dub, you're never going to be getting the 100% original intended viewing experience. That is, unless you learn fluent Japanese, which I doubt most people are going to do. This quote from Studio Ghibli director Hayao Miyazaki perfectly sums everything up.
Who is to say that a subtitle print is any more authentic? When you watch the subtitled version, you're probably missing just as many things. There's a layer and a nuance you're not going to get. Film crosses so many borders these days. Of course, it's going to be distorted.
And this brings us to the other side of the coin. I found that a lot of reasons that people prefer to watch their anime dubbed is because they find the experience to be more immersive. I absolutely understand how it can probably be easier for certain people to connect to a character when that character is speaking their own language. Not only in a sense of literal communication, but in terms of relatability as well. When you hear a character speak in the language that you've experienced your whole life and that your brain is already hardwired to understand, it can make the experience more natural and immersive for certain people. It's easier to pick up on certain emotions and nuances in a language you already know. Since the dawn of human speech, the most natural way people have communicated is face-to-face in a language they both understand. So it stands to reason when you have to read what the other person is saying, it's going to feel a bit more unnatural. Then you have the fact that certain cultures and regions have different ways they act out scenes or convey characters that might just vie more with certain viewers. For example, one of the biggest complaints I've seen leveled at subs is that a lot of female characters will talk with a really high-pitched girly voice, an element that people feel isn't as exaggerated in English dubs. I've also heard the argument that sub enjoyers might be a bit more critical of dubs because it's easier to distinguish an awkwardly read line in your own native tongue than it is in a foreign language. And yeah, I get that. I can tell you which lines in English are good and bad, but if I heard a badly delivered line in Japanese, I probably wouldn't even notice because I'm just not that familiar with the language. So I can see why dubs might sometimes get more criticism for this. There's also a case to be made for convenience, and honestly, this can go for both sides. In the case of dubs, something being in English just means you're making it all the more accessible. Sometimes people just don't want to read subtitles or have trouble reading subtitles in the case of people who have dyslexia. This is my biggest reason for preferring dub because I just really like to focus on the visuals of an anime. I mean, it is animation after all. And in the case of others, maybe they want to have it on while they're watching kids, making dinner, or folding laundry or something. English dubs just make it so that anime can have a wider audience and therefore be even more successful, which is really only a good thing. However, while subs might not have this specific convenience, that's not to say they don't have their own conveniences. For one, subs are typically going to come out much faster than dubs. And not every anime is going to get dubbed, but most are probably going to get subbed. So not only do you get anime faster, but you get a lot more of it. Really, there's advantages to both sub and dub. So is there a correct side to be on? Not really, no. The correct way to watch anime is to watch it in the way that brings you the most joy. I myself have always watched anime dub because that's just what I'm used to. Again, I would never claim it's the correct way to watch anime. That's just how I always have and how I personally enjoy it. If you dictate the way you watch things based on how other people tell you as opposed to how you want to, really, where's the joy in that? I think everyone should just watch anime in the way that makes them the happiest, regardless of what others say or think. If you ask me, I'd say that's the true way to watch anime.